we say Afro-American, they think only of the Negroes in the United States, but they don't realize that two-thirds of Brazil consists of people of African blood, which means they're also Afro-American because Brazil is in South America. And in all of these, many of these countries in South America and Central America, and even in Canada, they are heavily populated with people whose ancestors came from Africa. So when you total up the number of Afro-Americans, real Afro-Americans, in the Western Hemisphere, there are perhaps 100 million. And if these people ever unite among themselves, not only is it necessary for the Afro-Americans in the United States to be organized, but it's also necessary for the Afro-Americans in the Caribbean, or the Afro-Cubans, the Afro-Brazilians. It's necessary for all of them to be organized. And then once they are organized in each place, we have to organize among ourselves so that the Afro-American in the United States will be working in conjunction in a coordinated program with those who are in Cuba and those in Brazil and those in Venezuela and those throughout the Caribbean and Haiti and in the West Indian Islands. And in Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Dr. Soul Brother here with another remedy to help cure you of your ills. I hope everybody heard my show, the last show I did on Malcolm X. I felt it was necessary to do a follow up on that, which is what I'm doing right now. This, for me, is very, very significant and very, very important. And as I go along, you'll see why I feel this way. We talk a lot about, we celebrate Malcolm X. We just celebrated his 100th birthday on May 19th. And, while it's important to salute the memory and legacy of Malcolm X, we need to really take a deep dive into his um, evolution or metamorphosis, if you will. First of all, we need to be clear that when it came to, we all know his background in terms of his parents being Garveyites. His daddy was a Baptist preacher. His mother was a secretary for the Garvey movement and whatnot. His mother from Grenada, his father from Reynolds, Georgia. And let's be clear, I have nothing against uh, promotion, if you will, of Malcolm X's mother. I think that's great and all that because the fact of the matter is, without either one of his parents, we don't get Malcolm X. Having said that, I think it's interesting and it should be noted that when it comes to um, the whole thing with the, how do I say, um, losing my train of thought now. When it comes to the whole thing regarding his parents, his father has been reduced to a footnote, and that's problematic for a whole bunch of reasons, and we know why. Because he was a country boy from Reynolds, Georgia. So that's very important. That's very important. So anyway, let me move on here. Um, when it comes to the whole thing with um, Malcolm X evolution, he was in the Nation of Islam, and he was taught that he, as well as the rest of us in America, are from the tribe of Shabazz, and that uh, we are the so-called American Negroes. And Malcolm taught that for the 12 years that he was a minister in the Nation of Islam. However, once he was no longer in the nation, he broke away from that. You see, he metamorphosized from tribe of Shabazz to Afro American. And to you who out here um, who are how do you say um, Malcolm followers, Malcolm, Malcolm is your man and all that kind of stuff. The thing is this: we need to be clear. If you're gonna tell the story, you need to tell the whole story. And
I personally have a problem with those who just want to talk about Malcolm and his Pan Africanism and all of that and his black nationalism and just skip over, leapfrog, if you will, over him being an Afro American. I mean, let's be real here. We know that once he was no longer in the Nation of Islam after he was put out, which is a whole nother discussion, he created the Muslim Mosque Incorporated and shortly thereafter created the Organization of Afro American Unity, the OAAU. Now, he created the Muslim Mosque Incorporated after he was no longer in the nation. And then when he traveled to Mecca for his spiritual journey and all of that, um, and then and we focus on that, but there was also a political journey while he was in Africa. And let me go over something real quick here. I think this is important. In fact, I know it's important. And that's it. Please, y'all, uh, let me know how I can get it where we can dialogue with each other on live stream. I would love to do that, and we can, you you can engage me, I can engage you. But while he was in Ghana, this is when he was. Remember, he traveled to Mecca and all that, and he traveled to different parts of Africa. And this part of Africa, Ghana, is where you had Black American expatriates. Um, Julian Mayfield, Maya Angelou, and a host of others. Well, on page 359 in the chapter El Hajj Malik El Shabazz in the autobiography of Malcolm X. And when I read this, I'm thinking, man, most people don't even deal with this. And that is where he spoke before an audience in Ghana. And this is Malcolm X. He says, I stressed to the assembled, and I need y'all to really hear me. I stressed to the assembled press the need for mutual communication and support between the Africans and Afro Americans whose struggles were interlocked. I remember that in the press conference, I used the word Negro, and I was firmly corrected. Quote, the word is not favored here, Mr. Malcolm X. The term Afro American has greater meaning and dignity. End of quote. I sincerely apologize. I do not think that I said Negro again as long as I was in Africa. I said that the 22 million Afro Americans in the United States could become for Africa a great positive force. And he goes on. But the point is, when he returned to the US, he read the charter for the Organization of Afro American Unity that was modeled after the Organization of African Unity that came about in 1963 in Ethiopia. So, in there, he talked about what? Being Afro American and also about us being American. And if you hear the speech that he gave January 7th, 1965, Prospects of Freedom, he made reference to the American identity. And he also made a speech at the Audubon Ballroom on Afro American history. Come on, people, let's not play with this. But I'm gonna go even further. Y'all remember at Malcolm X's funeral, um, an actor by the name of Mr. Ozzie Davis. Well, he was an actor slash activist named Mr. Ozzie Davis. Somebody I had the privilege of meeting, by the way. But again, that's a whole nother piece. Um, what does he say in the eulogy delivered February 27th, 1965, at Faith Temple Church of God in Harlem? He says, for Harlem has ever been gracious to those who have loved her, have fought for her, and have defended her honor even to the death. It is not in the memory of man that this beleaguered, unfortunate, but nonetheless proud community has found a braver, more gallant young champion than this Afro American who lies before us, unconquered still. I say the word again, as he would want me to, Afro American. Afro American Malcolm, who was a master, was most meticulous in his use of words. Nobody knew better than he the power words have over the minds of men. Malcolm had stopped being a Negro years ago. it had become too small, too puny, too weak a word for him. Malcolm was bigger than that. Malcolm had become an Afro American, and he wanted so desperately that that all his people would become Afro Americans too. Case closed. That was settled. End of discussion. Period. And to those of y'all out here who got these petty hangups where it irritates you to be referred to as African American, or irritates you to be referred to as an American, deal with it. Get over it. There's a bit of pride, quite a bit of pride and dignity that comes with that, just as being an American citizen. Your citizenship is like your gold card, man. So deal with it. So, but it's more than just Malcolm X embracing his Afro American identity. With that comes what? Soul food. With that comes soul music. With that comes all the other things that we have created on this American soil from the time our foreparents stepped their bare feet on this American soil. And let's be clear, the American soil is soaked with the blood, sweat, and tears. So, what happened? Um, he was somebody who, in his Ballots of Bullets speech, did he not encourage us to join religious and fraternal organizations that were about the upliftment, of the black man? Did he not say that? So, when you talk about religious organizations, that would be those organizations, be they Muslim or Christian. Fraternal, that would be the Masons, the Eastern Stars. Well, he didn't mention Eastern Star, but essentially, the same thing. Masons, Eastern Stars, our fraternities and sororities, etc. Matter of fact, I would dare say that if Malcolm X had the privilege, opportunity to further his education instead of it being interrupted by that racist Mr. Ostrowski, his teacher there, and Malcolm X had gone on to college, there's no doubt in my mind he would have eventually become a member of the Divine Nine, just like his wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz, was a member of the Eastern Star Order, as well as a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Okay, so um, we need to be aware of these things. When you go through the autobiography of Malcolm X, Malcolm had fond recollection of being fed soul food, although at the time when he was eating this as a teenager, his sister Ella, the term was homecoming, down home cooking. Matter of fact, Junior Walker and the All Stars made a song in the '60s, giving that home cooking. The term soul food comes about in the 1960s, just like the term soul had become popular. So Malcolm X was a soul man. He was a soul brother. And if you listen to his speech on Afro American history, that's clear. Much of what he talks about, he was not talking about when he was in the Nation of Islam. Why? Because the truth of the matter is the Nation of Islam has a problem, had, and it continues to have a problem with the Afro American heritage in this country. They have a problem with it. And so, like a lot of people try to do, they superimpose their personal hangups on other people. That's how they roll. So, um, Malcolm X metamorphosizing from Tribe of Shabazz to Afro American was a big in your face to Elijah Muhammad. And make no mistake, that was one of the other things that uh, got under Elijah Muhammad and the others' skin. Okay. And Malcolm embraced black folks who were starting to wear their hair in its Afro natural form. Let's be clear. Let's also be clear. Elijah Muhammad, Nation of Islam, they threw shade on the Afro hairstyle. Did y'all know that? Let's be clear. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Um, Malcolm X inspired what was to come the very year that he was assassinated, and that was the Black Arts Movement. The Black Arts Movement reflected Malcolm X. It did not reflect the Nation of Islam. It reflected Malcolm X. Let's be clear. And what they were doing was embracing those things, whether it come to the food, whether it came to what else? Yeah, the food, the certain customs, the language, etc. That is what was happening with the Black Arts Movement. And Malcolm X had a lot to do with that. Not Elijah. Not Elijah. Let's be clear. Don't get it twisted. Okay? So that's what Malcolm was about. He had finally come home to what he had been all along, and that was Afro American. And during the last year of his life, Malcolm X, aka El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, returned to what he had always been, and that is Afro American. He pushing for us to embrace that identity. So here we are, decades later. I would encourage all of you who are black, under the sound of my voice, to embrace those things and to embrace your Afro American identity the way Malcolm X did. You say you love Malcolm? Well, guess what? Embrace that. And when you embrace that, you do honor to him and his memory and his legacy. So, for that, or with that rather, I'm going to end this. Please hit the like button. Please comment. Don't be shy. Comment what you like, dislike, and anybody out there, please help me where I can engage people maybe in a live program. So until the next time, God bless. Okay? That's important.